A lion dies on the savannah's dusty ground. The hunter poses triumphantly over its prey as the guide snaps pictures of the momentous occasion. This is a typical scene of a trophy hunt. There we go. The killing of an animal, such as a lion, is a source of contention amongst animal conservationists, who would desire and enjoy the killing of such a precious animal. In most cases, these animals are considered endangered or exotic. Is not killing them the polar opposite of protecting them? According to the International Union of Conservation of Nature, a trophy is defined as a part of the animal, such as the horns or head, that is usually kept by the hunter and taken home. Typically, a trophy is obtained by the stalking and killing the animal, then stripping it of the body parts the hunter desires. What has become a more problem in recent years is how hunts have been managed. Recently, there has been controversy surrounding trophy hunting, sparked by the 2015 death of Cecile the lion. Cecile was being studied by scientists at Oxford University. Walter Palmer, a dentist, allegedly paid $50,000 to have the chance to hunt a lion in Zimbabwe. He ended up stalking Cecile for 40 hours, taking his head as a trophy. The people responded in outrage at the needless killing of an animal loved by others. This prompted calls for trophy hunting to be banned completely. Hunts like these have only amplified people's cries for change and enabled organizations to rise and fight against trophy hunting. For example, the Humane Society of the United States feels that trophy hunters use cruel and inhumane methods to hunt. They say, quote, "The hunter's primary motivation is not to get food, but simply to obtain animal parts for display," end quote. They paint hunters as bloodthirsty killers only concerned with the thrill of the chase. However, organizations should exercise caution before outright prohibiting trophy hunting. Trophy hunting has the potential to provide significant benefits to communities and the global environment, as well as supporting the sport's stewardship. Trophy hunting shouldn't be banned, but should be encouraged. To clarify, first, it should be stated unequivocally that trophy hunting is not poaching. While the two terms are used interchangeably, poaching is defined by the dictionary as the illegal practice of trespassing on another's property to hunt or steal game without the landowner's permission. Poachers typically kill the animal and strip it of the body parts they desire. They do not pay for the right to hunt, nor do they adhere to hunting regulations of when and where to hunt. When conducted properly, trophy hunts charge the hunter for the experience, as well as provide them with the licensing and permission to hunt in specific areas. Poachers are motivated through the profit they will gain by the selling of the animal products, while trophy hunters are motivated through a sense of reverence and a wish to honor the animal they are hunting. Trophy hunting, when conducted properly, provides numerous benefits for communities in rural regions. The first benefit of trophy hunting is how it impacts underdeveloped communities. Whether it is in America, Canada, or Africa, all hunters must pay fees. Fees vary according to the animal they wish to hunt, as well as the transportation costs and shipping costs of the trophies. These fees are then paid to game reservations. Game reservations are areas that allow for the safe coexistence of wild animals as well as controlled hunting. A study found that trophy hunting generates $132 million in annual revenue, as well as supports 7,000 to 15,000 jobs in areas like Botswana, Ethiopia, and Mozambique, and many other African countries. Areas like Africa with more remote communities have fragile economic structures that can be reinforced through the revenue gained by trophy hunting. If trophy hunting were banned, there would be a loss of jobs, loss of community, and a loss of individual household incomes. If communities prohibit trophy hunting, they will create a hydra of economic difficulties, including those stemming from lack of food. A widespread misconception is that trophy hunters hunt for the trophy only and disregard the meat. Do not believe the lie. Disregarding the meat and leaving it to rot is considered poaching. The truth that many people miss is that hunters provide a lot of protein to protein-starved environments and find joy in providing for those communities. Those communities are malnourished primarily due to overpopulation and poverty. Additionally, airlines are not allowed to bring meat into and out of countries. Therefore, meat is left over from a hunt that a hunter cannot take with him. Meat is then donated to communities, sold as game meat, or given to the guides involved in the hunt. These donations and the sale of game meat supplement the food income received by rural communities. Philip Lazaro, a hunter, writes about his experiences hunting for African villages. He writes, "Meeting those people and seeing the first-hand tangible effects of providing protein in a protein-starved environment was an honor. Trophy hunting can provide an additional week's food for many people living in impoverished countries. Attempting to prohibit trophies would force those families to seek alternative sources of food that are inferior to the fresh meat from hunts." Along with providing a good food source to rural communities, trophy hunting also contributes to the global conservation efforts. To some, it may seem that trophy hunting is the antithesis of wildlife protection. However, trophy hunting incentivizes landowners, communities to preserve and protect their wildlife habitats. Catherine E. Semser, a researcher for conservation solutions, writes, "The primary economic incentives for habitat conservation are derived via revenue-sharing agreements between rural communities, private enterprises, and conservation agencies, and from direct payments to private landowners. The best example of incentives usage for conservation is the Communal Areas Management Program for Indigenous Resources, otherwise known as Campfire, in Zimbabwe. Rural communities lease hunting and tourism rights to commercial agencies in exchange for 50% of tourism revenue. These proceeds are required to be reinvested back into the community's development. Programs like these have incentivized farmers to return agricultural lands back into wildlife habitats. They are compensated for not developing land and maintaining a viable wildlife population. As a result, trophy hunters can hunt, conservationists can save species, and landowners are compensated, thereby contributing to the community employment and community economics. The funds can be used for various purposes, including anti-poaching and wildlife management. The International Union for Conservation of Nature found that, quote, private landowners and communal landowners also use trophy hunting revenues to pay guards and rangers, buy equipment, and otherwise manage and protect wildlife. If trophy hunting is prohibited, conservation will have to seek other, less beneficial methods of providing revenue for conservation. The problems created by prohibiting trophy hunting are far greater than the problems it solves. Trophy hunting also contributes significantly to wildlife management. It is a part of our jobs as stewards to care for the earth. We cannot do so if animal populations continue to grow out of control and negatively impact the environment. A more significant portion of trophy hunting is about land stewardship. The hunters are the people who best exemplify stewardship and a reverence for nature. They are the ones who experience nature in its entirety, which is becoming increasingly rare. Hunters are the protectors of wildlife because there would be no wildlife to experience without them. The notion that hunters are damaging wildlife for killing for trophies is illogical. Why would hunters do anything that would potentially jeopardize their ability to do something they enjoy? Dr. George N. Wallace, a professor at Warner College of Natural Resources, explains how he became emotionally attached to the places he would hunt. He says, quote, "I began to pay attention to land health, not just because it made for good hunting or fishing, but because you can find a diversity of other species, and because such places were interesting, inspiring, and hopeful," end quote. Most hunters hold the same reverence for nature as Wallace and feel the need to steward it. Wallace comments, "We respect that which eludes us," end quote. Hunters feel the same respect for nature as Wallace, and it drives them towards stewardship of the hunt. Some might ask if other forms of tourism could take the place of trophy hunting. They believe that the revenue gained by trophy hunting can be found in other areas of tourism, such as photography. Since they believe that trophy hunting has a negligible effect on GDP, income, and job creation, they think that phototourism can replace it, which has a significant impact as well as sparing animals' lives. However, these critics overlook the critical context of their criticisms. While phototourism does generate revenue, the majority of photographers prefer impressive settings for their subjects, and the majority of wildlife habitats do not offer those ideal photographic opportunities. The money generated by phototourism does help generate revenue for communities, but not as much as it would if trophy hunting were also implemented. For various reasons, phototourism is insufficient by itself to generate awareness and revenue for habitat protection. The first reason is, as previously stated, that big game hunting creates about 7,000 to 15,000 jobs, which is significant in third world countries where there can be fewer than 1,000 households in rural communities. The revenue generated by trophy hunting is the primary funder of conservation. In contrast, a 2016 study conducted by the United Nations World Tourism Organization found that phototourism contributes to half of African anti-poaching and wildlife conservation efforts. If trophy hunting were banned, then phototourism would be unable to fully support the methods to prevent anti-poaching. If trophy hunting were also banned, there would also be rural communities would lose a vital source of food. Another study shows that Zambia's tourism showed that trophy hunting provides more than 286,000 pounds of meat a year. If trophy hunting is removed, then the resource for food is removed. Another study showed that if trophy hunting were removed from wildlife conservancies in Namibia, 84% of them would become financially insolvent. Therefore, land would become available for development because phototourism would be incapable of utilizing all the available wildlife areas. If trophy hunting is banned, then phototourism would be insufficient to replace it. If trophy hunting is banned, then how should we as Christians think of trophy hunting? Isn't that God's creation that are being killed? Yes, the hunted animals are God's creation, but killing them does not defy God's word. In the beginning, God gave Adam and Eve dominion over creation. Genesis 1:28 explains, quote, "Then God blessed them, and God said to them, 'Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth.'" End quote. God created a hierarchy in nature in which mankind had dominion over creation and therefore had the right to hunt animals. There are also examples of hunters in the Bible that God mentions as good and just. The first hunter to ever be mentioned was Nimrod in Genesis 10:8-9. It says, quote, "Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord." Those abilities were given by God and were a gift from God. Nimrod was able to use those abilities to glorify God and honor God. There are also numerous examples of animals being used as resources in the Bible. The most compelling being when God clothed Adam and Eve in the garden after sin entered the world. Genesis 3:21 explains that those clothing came from animal skins. These clothing required the death of an animal, demonstrating that God does not prohibit the death of his creation for the sake of mankind, even in sin. Clearly, God does not prohibit the death of the killing or the hunting of his creation. However, there is a wrong way to trophy hunt, to have little regard for wildlife being only concerned with the thrill of the chase and the trophy at the end. Proverbs 12:27 states, quote, "The lazy man does not roast what he took in hunting, but diligence is a man's precious possession." This verse explains that hunters should respect and not be wasteful of God's creation. An ethical Christian should understand that the animal they are hunting was created by a God and deserves to be respected. That the head they hang on their wall was created by a compassionate creator and should serve as a reminder for God's provision for his creation. A Christian should view trophy hunting with an understanding that they have dominion over nature and a responsibility to care for it. By not banning trophy hunting, they will effectively protect the Creator's creation. Those who advocate for the banning of trophy hunting should be more cognizant of the unintended consequences. There is a difference between poaching and trophy hunting that benefits rural communities and a nation's economy. Proceeds from hunting fund anti-poaching awareness and improve the lives of communities through the selling of game meat and the jobs trophy hunting creates. Trophy hunting positively impacts biodiversity, especially in areas that development threatens wildlife protection. It would be better to live in a world where responsible trophy hunting exists than to live in one where biodiversity and economic stability are lost. We should understand that by banning trophy hunting, will create more problems, or else we will have a biodiversity and economic dilemma on our hands. Thank you. Questions now?
Jessica, you did a nice job.
Thank you.
You had a lot of good data, and particularly liked your biblical defense.
Thank you.
So I have one question, especially early on in your thesis. You ascribed motives to trophy hunters.
Yeah.
And I wondered where you got that information, right? How you came to understand the motives of trophy hunters in general.
Yeah, so I read a lot in researching this. I read a lot of firsthand experiences of trophy hunters, and none of them really, they talked about how it was often perceived by people who don't generally hunt that they are out for like the thrill of the chase and for, you know, that awesome bragging right of the head on their wall and stuff. And I found instead that they actually like love nature and they love these animals that they're hunting, and they find that in pursuing a trophy, they're just respecting the animal. It's not coming from a place of bad motives, I would say, bad ethical motives. So, yeah.
So that's fair. Yeah, that's good. Another question. Where did you get your interest in this particular topic?
I want to.
Maybe that's off days, but I'll ask anyway. I'm curious.
Yeah, I want to study in college biology with an emphasis in animal sciences, and I knew I wanted to do my thesis on something related to animals. This was the best I could come up with. Maybe there's a better one out there, but this seemed the most controversial one. Yeah.
Fit all the requirements.
Well, that's excellent. I think you did a really nice job.
So, question about the term trophy hunting. Why is it called trophy hunting?
Because the hunters are usually hunting for either meat or trophies. Like, as defined by the International Union of Conservation of Nature, a trophy is a part of an animal such as the horns or head that is usually kept by the hunter and taken home.
Okay, so neither the head nor the horn are probably eaten away.
No.
Because didn't you also say, though, that one of the main, if not the main motivator for trophy hunting is to eat the protein and provide protein for people who need protein?
Yeah, so I said that the main motivator was to honor the animal by having a trophy of that animal and to enjoy what that animal brings. But I also, in that point with the whole meat situation, that was to show how the meat isn't just wasted. So mainly in like America, if you're hunting in America, hunters can obviously take that meat if they live in America. But if they're going on expeditions to other countries, they can't, airlines won't let them take that meat home. It's pretty hard to get that meat home. So I'm showing that they're still not being wasteful with that hunt. They're donating it to communities who are in actual need of other nutritious food than what they can actually get themselves.
Okay, so along those same lines then, if part of trophy hunting is to have that trophy on the wall, how does that, I think your quote, or I think on the slide you said it, like honors or respects or
We
reverence?
respect that which eludes us. Is that the one I'm talking about?
No, there's somewhere in there where you talk about how like some like part of trophy is when you have the comparison between the trophy hunting and coaching. There's something in there about either honor or reverence, something along those lines.
Okay.
How does that honor the animal, having the trophy on the wall?
Well, it's kind of like if you like. It's there, towards the end of my thesis, I talked about how the head should serve as a reminder for people that, at least Christians, should see it as a reminder of God's creation and His provision for His creation. So in that way, they're kind of honoring the hunt and honoring God's creation. To a non-Christian hunter, I would say it's more of, if their values are in the right place, it's more of honoring what it took to get that animal, without being, it shouldn't be out of a bragging type of a way, but it should be serving as a reminder as like, it took effort.
So could there be a better term for it than trophy hunting? If trophy hunting implies that the idea is victory over the thing, you win something, you get something, which seems very focused on the hunter as opposed to the animal.
Yeah, there could be, like, there's big game hunting or just game hunting, but that kind of implies more meat. The best evidence that I found for a different name was trophy hunting. So.
Hi, I don't know. I'm Patty Smith. I don't know. Great job.
Thank you.
Great job. And I'm very sympathetic to your thesis. So I had to work hard to come up with a question. But one of the things that struck me was a question of, does the motivation of the hunter really matter when it comes to the conservation and stewardship and the economic sustainability of trophy hunting? And how does the motivation of these hunters really play out if the economic results are really the same regardless of the hunter's motivation?
I would say that in my thesis, I was addressing both sides. So if someone were to say, well, what are the hunters' ethics? What are they doing this for? Is this just for them to be doing? So that's how I addressed that question was, well, they're doing it out of a sense of honor. And then for the ones who do have a more ethical view, it should be out of also like trying to conserve the animals, trying to provide for the third world countries that need the money and that need the meat. So that's kind of how I tried to address both ethical and just kind of practical of what would their motives be.
And another thing that occurred to me, and this is just, I don't know if you came across this in your research. So photojournalism, the photography thing, seems to be the main alternative that people bring up, to, we shouldn't do trophy hunting, we should do photo shoots or whatever. Mm-hmm. Was there anything else besides that people suggested for use of that land, and for that type of conservation type of thing? I'm just curious.
I don't think so. Most of like the things I found were objections to, well, we could turn it into like photo tourism, so like safari or like tourism, just that kind of thing. I don't think I saw anything that would have been other than the photo.
I was just curious. It just kind of occurred to me.
It's very specific, like, but it could be photo tourism.
Right.
Yeah.
Very specific. I just wondered if there was anything else that people were coming up with aside from agriculture or
well, the fear with the agriculture part is that it's pushing the animals out of that area. So you're trying to keep it habitat while generating revenue for the communities and incentivizing them to keep the wildlife habitats.
Great job.
One other question. Did you find any data that compared the income from photojournalism versus the income from safari hunting or trophy hunting?
I think so. Probably.
Yeah.
I remember that in my research, when they were comparing the two, the people who were saying phototourism is better, they weren't taking trophy hunting in all of its context. They were just comparing just the numbers.
So I want to talk about the economics of trophy hunting. I think you say that there's an economic benefit to trophy hunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in your thesis, you also say that, quote, the most severe threat to wildlife is the expansion of human economic activities. Isn't trophy hunting an economic activity?
When I meant severe human economic activities, that was kind of pointing to agricultural development, putting like a building in, or just completely driving wildlife out of the area. That was kind of what I meant by extreme. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. If there is economic reasons to encourage trophy hunting, to what extent should there be limits on trophy hunting?
I would say to when the limit should be when it starts endangering the species. And I know that, especially in Africa, there's a lot of animals that are endangered, but there are, parts of that species, like let's say there's an elephant that won't be producing any more children, or isn't really helping anything in the area, is just becoming more of a hindrance to its population's growth. Then I would say that's when you can bring a trophy hunter in. He has to pay to hunt the animal. He has to, the meat goes to the community around it. So if that doesn't happen, if they don't meet kind of those, if the animals start becoming endangered specifically because trophy hunting isn't being responsible, that's when I would say it doesn't become an economic benefit anymore.
Are there any other limits besides just if the animal is
Endangered.
a hindrance or a hindrance to its species?
I would say no.